Hey guys, welcome back to The Sensitivity Doctor. This is Dr. Amelia Kelley, your host, and I am super excited for this episode today. This is one of my favorite return guests, Britt Frank. She is a therapist, an author, a keynote speaker, and she is talking all about her new book, Align Your Mind. In it, she does this really cool thing with one of, I think, the most powerful forms of therapy, internal family systems. She takes it and molds it into something beautiful that you can use in your everyday life to do things like approach your people-pleasing parts, or figure out why you just can't get that habit going, or figure out why you can't kick that addiction. Even things like working with your child parts and what they need. We break it down. We have a huge conversation about this with a little bit of fun and some laughter. I just adore her. She's awesome. And I hope you enjoy the episode as much as me and all my parts did. Enjoy. I am so excited to talk to you about your book. I loved it so much. I felt like I was a student of yours during it. So yeah, how's all the interviewing and tours and everything been? You've been kind of crazy.
Doing the things,
Yeah.
it can be disheartening to do all the things and all the things and all the things. And it's it's an interesting journey.
Yeah. Does it feel different than when your other book came out?
So the other one was so new. I had no expectations. I was just thoroughly delighted to have it done.
Yeah.
And this one, I'm like, okay, I did events. I did launch parties. I planned thoroughly. I did PR stuff. And it's like, okay, just keep doing the thing. It's all good. It's just everyone I think has that fantasy of, you're going to have this humongous first week. And it's like, okay, it's a quiet launch, slow and steady.
I always see the books that, honestly, I can relate to in the sense that I think they're similar to the kind of books that I write. They're very evergreen.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like, I don't know, Kristen Hanna coming out with her new novel or something. It's like, as people need it, they come and find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it's not trendy. It's like classics, humaning stuff that we all need. And Science of Stuck took a few years before it got its feet. So it's fine. It's all good.
Well, I will say though, okay, so I like that you said it's not trendy or anything like that. I actually see what you did in your book as taking Richard Schwartz's internal family systems work from, I don't know, decades ago, and packaging it in a way where people could actually go, oh, okay, so this is how I take that really amazing theory and apply it to things in my life that are stressing me out or making me feel terrible or want, to feel better with. So I guess I'll kind of start there, because instead of asking you, what is internal family systems? I thought it might be interesting for me to very quickly give my classic version of what I understand of it, because I feel like you have taken the classic version and given it a totally new spin. And then that's where I would love to have you pick up with. So as far as, I think it was 10 years plus ago that I did my first internal family systems training. It's been something that's been so part of therapy and really just life. And I've always seen it as we have the managers, we have the firefighters, we have our exiles, we have our self-energy. They all have their own roles. We don't want to demonize any of the roles. And really just the multiplicity, we are all these parts. We don't want to abolish them. We don't want to get rid of them. We want to learn about them and grow with them and get curious about them. These are all kind of these baseline things that I've always known to be true about IFS. And it's once you know it, you can't unknow it. So instead of us making this whole thing about let's regurgitate the same thing of IFS always, how the heck did you take that and turn it into what you turned it into? I don't even, it was so good. I have so many very specific questions, for real. So the first is align. Your whole book, Align Your Mind, is about a new way of working with these parts that I haven't heard before. So could you start with where you came up with this, what it means, and how we can apply it to our conversation today?
Yeah, and I'll start by saying, Dr. Richard Schwartz, who created internal family systems, I was so scared to send him the manuscript because
Oh, I
it's not,
bet.
the book's not IFS. It's
Right.
like I took a very classically trained, like I'm trained in the classical IFS model and sort of just like deconstructed it. I like
You really
Project
did.
Runway did it because like Runway
Wait, did
did
you
it.
Project One Way or did you like nail it from, no, I'm just kidding. You know, when they do the cake, I'm just kidding.
Nailed it, failed it. Well,
Although, no, I think you
fortunately,
actually nailed it.
I love that show. He was lovely and endorsed the book, which just made my part so happy. And so when I was doing my IFS training, there's a protocol. It's evidence-based, which means it's rigorous. It's been studied, and there's a protocol to how you do it. And then when I would take it out into my own clinical practice and my own life, it was just never that neat and clean. I remember being
Right.
in IFS trainings, watching these amazing demos where amazing, beautiful things would happen. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Because my experience of this model is me. Is it me? Am I just a bad therapist? And it's like, no, like people are going to be people-y. You put a bunch of therapists in a room, you're going to get a different experience than people who have never done therapy.
Right. Totally.
So my intention was to take the IFS model and make it really applicable for non-therapy people, non-clinical people, business people, and really piece it out. From the IFS lens, the goal is to be in self, to unblend, to unburden, and like it's lovely. But for me, there's like years of like, can we just do it in little pieces? Can we take little and extract like, here's how you work with your inner critic. Like forget about unburdening and unblending. Like let's just understand what is the mechanism here and how do we make it easy. I like making things easy. My first book was about making things easy. And Align is really, because I was trained in somatic experiencing first, so nervous system, body. And IFS and somatics are taught separately, and they shouldn't be. Like, they should be. I get why they're not, because it's like a whole separate body, a whole separate thing.
Right.
But the Align method is me like mushing together cognitive therapy, somatics, IFS, spirituality, mindfulness, just general common sense, addiction recovery, all of it, and sort of my remash of it all. Yeah.
So Align, you do have an acronym in there that you repeat. I like it because it's like scaffolding. Like the first time I heard it, I'm like, okay, how am I going to remember this? And then the second and the third, and I say heard because I did listen to it. I really enjoyed hearing you read it. You were like hanging out with me all week. But instead of, I was jokingly telling you that when I got the advanced version from your publisher and I wanted to listen to it before we got to meet together, I was listening to, I think it was like Adobe's British weird robot version of a reader. And it was you, but it was you in like a weird British robot version of you. It was so bizarre. But so Align, what does the acronym stand for and why is it so important?
Yeah, so the acronym Align is your quick and dirty. Here's the tool that you reach for when you don't have time to process your feelings and you don't have time to explore your triggers and go into your shadows. So simply put, Align is acknowledge you're having a thought or a feeling. Like, I suck. I'm just going to acknowledge a part of me thinks that I suck. I'm not going to do anything except acknowledge. Doing just that does a lot of jobs. So A is acknowledge. L is listen. Like, what is this part actually trying to communicate? There's under every quote negative thought is usually fear, shame, or grief. So like, what's actually happening with this message? Then I in Align is investigate, which means ask questions. Anyone you cared about, if they came to you and said, everything sucks and I suck and the world sucks, you'd probably say like, okay, what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
what kind of day are you having? Like, let's talk about this. So investigate practice some inquiry. And then the G is gratitude, but not gratitude out. I don't like that the whole gratitude practice of the wellness world doesn't include ourselves. Your brain's on your side. Take 5 seconds to say, all right, brain, I don't get this. I don't like this. This is uncomfortable, but thank you for trying to keep me alive. And then the N is negotiate, which is now we need to figure out what do we do with this information. And so that does combine mindfulness and cognitive and body awareness and parts acknowledgement in a really like acknowledge, listen, investigate, gratitude, negotiate, Align.
How does the body get involved with that?
Yeah, the very act of listening to your thoughts without assuming they're true or assuming you're the thinker of the thoughts. Like, we are the observer of the thoughts, we are the noticer of the thoughts. The very act of listening to your own thoughts and investigating slows down your fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It slows down the cortisol, and it does create front brain activity versus this reactive brain, like, I'm thinking a bad thought, therefore it must be true. Therefore, now I must go destroy myself. Just the act of listening and challenging and questioning and negotiating, all of that is a somatic technique.
Okay, I could see that. I could also see a line working more easily depending on what part it is
Yeah.
that's coming up. You pieced apart so many different types of parts, and I do think it's good for people to know there's really no limit to our parts. It's endless and evolving, but you did piece apart shadows, the critics, which you broke up into two different categories, and the child parts. And I want to talk about all of them. So I don't know which one you would want to start with because I have specific questions about all three different types of parts. So like this is like a grab bag. You pick which parts you want to work with first and you want to talk about, and then I'll tell you what questions I have about them.
I would love to start with the impulsive parts, the bad habits
Ooh.
parts, the ones that do the things we don't like procrastinate and binge
Okay.
and scroll and do drugs and date the same person over and over again.
Yes,
Because
please.
the relationship we're all taught to have with our impulsive parts, and this is from like minor things, like I bought 3 like choppers on Amazon to I'm doing hard drugs and I'm about to die because of my shenanigans, and like
Okay.
I've been
I love
on
them
both.
smiling at that. I shouldn't have been smiling.
Yeah, I mean, like the spectrum is broad, but like
Yeah.
wherever you fall, we are taught to fear or hate or be ashamed of these parts of ourselves. Now, I'm not saying you should co-sign on the behavior and do whatever you want, but if fighting our impulsive parts worked, it would have worked. I worked as an inpatient, therapist at a drug rehab, and I saw this merry-go-round, and I saw this very, very power-oriented, you should be ashamed of yourself and stop the thing, and while you're in this room, your addiction's
War
out
on
there
drugs.
doing push-ups, the war on drugs,
Yeah.
fighting addiction. It's like, oh my God, but that doesn't work. Like, we've been doing that since the 50s. So like,
Right.
maybe we try to update the operating software and start with
Right.
what if your impulsive parts were trying to help you? How would that change your approach?
I liked when you said something in your book about that saying that we've all heard when you repeat something enough times and you continue going back to it, it's insanity. And you said instead it's
Oh, the quote that's like Einstein said, and
right.
there's no evidence that he said it. But okay, the internet says that Einstein said doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. It's like, no, it's effing not. That is the definition of trauma repetition. And that's how
Yeah.
brains are wired. Our brains are designed to keep on doing the same thing over and over again because it's trying to get a different result. That's not insanity. Like, it feels like insanity because it's like, why would I go back to the same relationship?
Right.
Why would I pick up the drug? Why would I do the thing? We can't all be insane. I'm sorry. Like, most people have some sort of addiction or habit or compulsion that's problematic. We're not all insane. Like, sorry, that math does not math.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and I like that you were highlighting it's kind of like the mechanism to compare. I mean, it's hard to compare logistically crack with Netflix, but the mechanism at which we get there can be similar.
And having done both, like been a hardcore drug addict and a Netflix binger and an eating disorder and
You get the "Are you still watching?" notice that there's a problem.
disable the notice. Yes, I'm still
I
watching.
should do that.
But it's the same. Again, it's a more I'm not comparing the pain or the damage or the devastation. I'm saying the mechanism, the function is the same. And the
Right.
function is protection. Whether I'm doom scrolling or like shooting up, I have a part of me that's in pain that doesn't have the resources, the access, or the skills to be able to manage that pain. And
Right.
so our impulsive parts will show up in that gap.
There's something I often say to my clients when I'm trying to get them to understand why we need to stay curious. And when you're saying investigate, it makes me think of the IFS curious piece with
Yes.
our parts. I give them the image of them coming into therapy and they're really, really upset and they're feeling flooded and they're overwhelmed. And I listen and I sit and I hold space and I'm there and I'm curious and it makes them want to keep talking and keep going and discovering. Or they come in, they get up in my face and invade my chair even. I feel threatened and so flooded and overwhelmed that I don't know what to do. I get hijacked and I tell them to leave. And then no work gets done.
Are you talking about your parts, your clients?
I'm saying this as if my clients,
Okay.
I'm emulating what it would look like if we did it
Okay.
internally.
God,
but
I'm like, your
giving them the
clients do
pick.
that?
No, gosh, no, no. No, I will say though, little like story. I did have one client once, very, very spirited client, say that something I said made him want to punch me. And that was as close as I've ever gotten to someone like being threatening in a session. We ended the session. We did meet again a couple weeks later, and he brought me an apology mug. So
Nice.
we worked through it. But that being said, being able to feel safe, and I think curiosity, like to your point, is a big part of that. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Therapize your own parts.
right. But when it comes to, you were saying the impulsive parts, I feel like this might be a good moment to bring up what you were talking about the different types of inner critics we have. And I feel like you had mentioned, was it like coach and controller? I don't remember how you put
Yeah.
it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be able to like marry the two? Like when we have impulsive things that we don't like that we're doing, how can we more like strategically or usefully work with our critic? And is our critic even always a bad thing?
Oh, I love that question. Okay, so what happens if you don't know that you have parts or how parts work? When you do the bad thing, your inner critic, if you're not getting curious and compassionate and collaborative and approaching that part like a therapist would approach an overwhelmed client, because you're right, like when we treat our own thoughts with the same care that a therapist treats the client. I'm not saying you don't need therapy, not you people, but like I go to therapy.
I'm sure we all need therapy.
We all need therapy. But our self-talk should sound more like, huh, really? Okay, tell me more. I want to understand what's going on for you.
Right.
But when we don't do that, our critic will always take over. So I do a bad thing, and now my inner critic is yelling at me for doing the bad thing. And now I feel shame. So now I feel worse, which is going to create a loop of doing more of the bad thing to avoid the feelings that come from doing the bad thing and feeling bad about doing the bad thing. And then the original wound is still there.
Right.
And so the two types of inner critics are really based on their motivation. Like when our inner critic is a high performance coach, life gets really good. A high performance coach doesn't coddle, doesn't enable, doesn't go, oh, poor you. You don't want to go to the gym because it's cold. Okay, you should just stay in bed. A high performance coach knows how to draw the best out of every player based on their strengths and knows when to encourage and when to push and when to hold space and when to give a good quick, swift kick in the butt and like, okay, you're feeling away. Now we're doing the thing anyway. Let's go. That kind of critic is great. This idea that all criticism is bad is really not useful. Like without a critic, a constructive critical eye, how are you going to know when you need to get better? Like when I first decided I wanted to write a book, I had a voice in me that says, who do you think you are? You know nothing about writing a book. It wasn't the most pleasant conversation with myself, but that part of me was right. And it's like, oh, I don't. Okay, cool. Who does? How do I learn this? Who can I learn from? What books can I read? What workshops can I go to? How do I learn the thing? Without any inner critic, we become grandiose. With the controlling inner critic that tears us down, we become frozen and small. And so I advocate for let's retrain the critic to be a high performance coach. And then the book talks about how to do that.
So how could you, well, actually, I have a specific question about that. I'm thinking about some of my clients now where they have actually almost said this, but I didn't realize it's what they were saying, where we've talked about self-compassion and speaking to yourself kindly. And they've said, well, I feel like if I'm not hard on myself, I'm not going to be able to do the things I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How can we, because to me, it almost sounds like you're saying that the coach, like the supportive coach or the constructive critical coach, is the constructive critical coach more in cahoots with the self energy than the controller?
Yeah. And it's not always kind sounding. And I think this is where all the self compassion stuff sort of gets misconstrued as well. If I'm nice to myself all the time and I'm kind to myself all the time, then I'm not going to want to do anything. And that's where it's important that kindness doesn't always feel good. And kindness doesn't always sound flowery and loving and validating. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do to someone is tell them, no, I'm not going to help you with this because I believe in your wholeness more than I believe in your story of your lack of wholeness. And so, no, I'm not going to bail you out. Enabling someone is easy, but it's not kind. And so the high performance inner coach doesn't always sound nice, but the essence, the intention is to help us level up to our own standards, not to enable us to stay in a place where we're not aligned with how we want to show up and who we want to be.
So if you notice that you want to motivate yourself, you want to change a habit or a behavior, what would you say is a way that you could try to connect or pull out the type of critic you want?
So if you're wanting to change a habit, and like, you don't have to do this work for every habit. Some people can genuinely just stop doing a thing or just start doing a thing. And my hat is off to those people. I cannot. I need a little bit more effort to change longstanding habits. So you can't start a habit change and expect to sustain it if you're just white knuckling yourself out of the behavior. For most people. So we have to start with.
I wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
We have to, like, let's say you want to start a workout routine. Like, this is why New Year's goals fail by and large universally. It's like, but there's a reason you haven't worked out for the last year. You set the same goal January 1st last year and the year before and the year before. Whether it's I want to start working out or I want to stop drinking or whatever, we need to know which parts of you are being asked to retire. They're not going to retire if they are not understood, and if you don't make damn sure that whatever job they were doing is covered by another part of you. That's why we don't address the function of a behavior. We don't sustainably change a behavior.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm trying to imagine, like, if someone's listening and they're thinking, okay, how do I conceptualize that? So hypothetically, you want to start a workout routine, and you continue not to, just like you're saying. And if you did some of the work that you're talking about, like you align with your parts, you get curious and you go inward and you notice there is hypothetically, a part that feels resistant because it doesn't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
Like a rebel part.
Yeah.
So then you can't really expect yourself to start whatever this new routine is until you figure out why the rebel part feels it has to work so damn hard.
So here's where a fun little quick, I don't like hack, but
Okay.
like, you don't actually have to figure out why the rebel feels that way.
Okay.
It's useful.
Okay.
But that question, why, will get you really deep, but it's not
Okay.
going to get you very far.
Ooh,
and so
okay.
that's where the end and like, I want to do that work. I want to dive deep. And like, a lot of people don't. They're like, I don't care why the rebel feels this way. What do I need to do to change?
Okay.
I would advocate, but we need to get to know all of our parts. But I'm a realist. We don't all have that kind of time. So that's where the micro yes and the negotiate of the align acronym come into play. So the N, negotiate, is okay, I've aligned, I've listened, I've investigated, I have sussed out, I have a part that's like, you're not going to tell me what to do. I refuse to even take 5 minutes to go to the gym. Cool. Now we need to negotiate our way down to a micro yes. A micro yes for working out is not going to be 5 minutes of a walk. It might be literally go to your front door, take 2 steps outside, and then go back in and you're done for the day. And that's it. A micro yes is the negotiation with a resistant part. Now, people will be like, well, how do you negotiate with like a heroin addicted part? And my answer is like, you can't, because that's lethal. Sometimes you need medical intervention.
Right.
And this is not the appropriate tool if there's a life and death crisis. But for non-lethal things, negotiating with a micro yes is going to soothe that part a little bit. It's like, I'm not telling you what to do, but we're going to negotiate here. I'm acknowledging your feelings. I'm listening. I'm investigating. I'm giving you gratitude. And now we're going to do a tiny little micro yes forward. And the micro yes needs to be small enough that it's easy. And what that does is it prevents shame It prevents cortisol. It prevents the critics from freaking out. And you're able to get a win under your belt. One win banked is going to lead to another one because dopamine.
Right. And history and storytelling and all of that.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So negotiate. Now, let's say hypothetically the part that shows up that doesn't want to work out is oppositional and defiant and acting like, a 2-year-old. So now here are the child parts that it was genuinely one of my favorite parts of the entire book when you were talking about, because it really helped me conceptualize, especially for a lot of the people pleasers I work with, because I work with a lot of folks who are highly sensitive. And so, we are deep empaths, and it's hard not to please when we know what people would like. And also folks who have left abusive relationships or traumatic childhood situations who were essentially trained to people please to survive these situations. So let's say this is a child part that shows up. And actually, how do people know if a child, I think maybe that's a good place to start. How do we even know that a child part is showing up?
And this doesn't need to get super deep in the weeds. Like, again, this is the listen, investigate part of a line. Like, if you kind of take even a little bit of curiosity towards what you're feeling, I can very clearly hear parts of me when I don't want to do something that will sound like a 5-year-old. I don't want to eat vegetables. I want to go for ice cream. And once you're practiced, you'll hear yourself think that. That does sound like a kid. Or if I hear myself thinking, well, F this and F you and F everybody and everything is terrible, that kind of sounds like a teenager-y part.
Yeah.
And so you don't need to know this is the age of my 6 3/4-year-old part. It's like, generally speaking, are we talking young child, middle school, high school? Like, where on the developmental stages does it feel like this voice sounds like they are? And the nice thing is if you're wrong, your parts will tell you. It's like, oh, this sounds like a really little kid part. No, I'm 10 years old. I'll have you know. Like, kids really like correcting adults, and our inner thoughts are no different.
Right. So then you have a child part show up, and you recognize it's there. I loved your suggestion around identifying what that age range most needs, and then providing something it needs without giving away the whole shebang, because I know we want folks to go read all of these fabulous interventions, but what would maybe be one child range that you would want to put out there that might be saying, I don't want to work out, or I don't want to stop the bad habit?
Yeah, and this is where self-care can get really complicated for people, because it's like self-care is bubble baths and kale smoothies and long walks on the beach, but the things that feel like self-care for one part of you are not going to feel like self-care to another part of you. There's not one part of my child parts, not any of them are going to be encouraged by a protein smoothie. I have perimenopausal parts that will feel really nurtured by that, but inner child parts really don't like adult things. And so we want to come up with a menu of okay, generally speaking, itty bitty little infant-sized humans need lots of touch and love and connection and nurture and quiet. And generally speaking, little kids need fun, and they need bright colors and play and creativity. Broadly speaking, teenagers need friends and time away from responsibilities. And so once you figure out the age of the part, then it's just a matching game. It's we want to match a 16-year-old's thing to a 16-year-old part, and not try to soothe a 16-year-old with kale. That doesn't compute. That doesn't add up. And I can give you an example. Please. I did a circus show 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. How did that go? I saw the pictures. They look beautiful.
God. It went well, objectively, but my parts were all flipping out. I walk onto the stage. It's terrifying. It's not my prime. I'm not a professional trained dancer or athlete. So this is
when does one become professional at this? Because you're performing.
I am performing. I'm not getting paid. So.
Oh, wow. That's a whole nother conversation.
What did someone say? I think being a professional means you don't get to choose when and how it happens. This is just what you do.
Oh,
I can choose to perform or not perform.
Okay.
I can choose
that's an interesting way to put it. Okay.
I don't know who said that. As I'm walking out onto the stage, and it's a solo, so it's just me, and the music is starting, and I'm walking, and I very clearly heard a little part of me say, I don't want to, I'm hungry. And then I got kind of dizzy. I'm hungry. I want snacks. Okay. And I've worked with this part long enough. I'm like, okay. And this is all happening while I'm walking out. I have 12 counts to get to my hoop. And I'm like, I know this is scary. I've got us. We're here. And thank you for being here. And as soon as we're done with this routine, food is not always a good reward, disclaimer. But for this particular activity,
right.
This part really needed to know when we're done, we are going to go for ice cream. I never eat ice cream. I'm mindful of sugar.
Yeah.
Like, I am going to take you for ice cream when this is done. And then as I'm like getting lifted on my hoop, I could feel her sort of settle back and I was able to execute the routine. But there's a lot going on that you don't see on camera. And so, again, it's not about bribing parts.
Right.
If I had more space and time, I might go deeper. But like, I had a job to do in that moment. So I didn't have that kind of time. That was like, I promise you, baby girl, we're going to go for ice cream. And she's like, okay.
As a mom to little kiddos, I really resonate with that. I'm thinking of moments where like my then 4-year-old son was leaving his t-ball game, literally in the middle of it, was walking up to me and asking for snacks. And I'm like, get back on second base. What are you doing? But knowing him and knowing what he needs now, as he's now 5 and he's still doing t-ball, I know to feed him snacks right before the game so that he won't abandon the game midway through. So it kind of makes me think of the whole reparenting thing a bit.
Yes.
I would love if you could talk about that a little bit, because I did like your perspective on reparenting, especially because I think you had kind of explored the fact that we don't have to reparent ourselves only if we had terrible childhoods or only if we had absent parents. Like, adulting in itself can be a form of reparenting all the time because we're the ones in charge of doing it now. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I make a very clear distinction between self-parenting and reparenting.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone needs to self-parent. Everyone. I don't care if you had the best childhood in the world. Like, once you're grown, like you said, the adulting is now your job. Like, your parents can still be players in your life, but ultimately it's you and you in the morning when you wake up and when you go to sleep at night, and when you die, it's you and your parts that are checking out to wherever we go next. And so everyone needs to self-parent. Reparenting is only if your parenting was less than ideal. So, like, if you had an amazing childhood or a mostly amazing childhood, fine. You don't have to go back and redo everything that went wrong, but you still need to self-parent. For me and for all the people I know, we had to go back, unlearn the old stories, and then kind of redo things. And then we can self-parent from a place of encouragement and kindness and compassion and high performance coaching. But if you have trauma, you have to unlearn and reparent. If you don't have childhood trauma, you have to self-parent. So you don't get a choice about whether or not this is necessary. It's like, once you're a grown human, this is not negotiable.
It's crazy because I'm sitting here thinking personally, like, when have I noticed myself reparenting? When have I noticed myself self-parenting? And I think to bring Netflix up again, we could have Netflix sponsor this episode.
Really?
I think for me, I have to do self-parenting when I have to tell myself, turn the TV off and go to bed. Like, revenge insomnia sounds cool, but it's not that cool. And that feels very immediate. Like, the self-parenting feels like it's very present, it's front and center, it's happening in the here and now, and I'm making a decision to do something that is hopefully going to be beneficial for myself. For me, reparenting feels a little bit more kind of historical or reflective. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm experiencing something, I notice a part come up, probably a child part, and then I have to, and I guess this, does mindfulness and being connected, I almost have to make a conscious decision. Do I like this? Do I not like this? Is this something I would like to do differently for me now, or for my own kids, or, just people in general? Like, it feels a lot more historical, decisive, and then maybe the action comes.
Yeah. And that's where traditional IFS is really great for helping you rewire. Because the way that the IFS model is structured, that approach does the job of helping you go back and identify the target part and figure out what was the messaging. And then you do the memory reorganization and the unburdening. So the IFS model by itself is fabulous if you decide I need to go a little bit deeper with some of these child parts and really work to reparent them. The IFS model is great for that. My take on it isn't like instead of IFS. It's, if you don't want to do that work, this is all the other stuff that's laying on the ground that's available to pick up before you have to do that.
I'm so glad you put it that way, because I think this very moment, I'm now really distinguishing the difference between the two, because they both, honestly, I feel like have similar benefits in a way, but it almost reminds me a little bit more of like being, psychodynamic or Freudian, like, going back into the history and the why and deeper consciousness and all of that. That feels very IFS to me. But sometimes, to your point, either we don't have the time, or honestly, we're feeling too triggered or traumatized. Yeah. Could you maybe speak on how your perspective would be useful for someone with trauma? Because I do know you touch on trauma a bit as well.
Yeah, and it's the book wasn't intended to address really complex, deep trauma, but the tools in it are useful. It's sort of like how DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, doesn't solve trauma, but it gives you enough infrastructure that you can cope, whereby then trauma work is not going to glitch your brain.
Right.
And so a lot of the techniques in my book are really good coping strategies, and they're really useful for especially for people who have never spent 1 second of time alone inside their mind. It's really scary to close your eyes and now let's go inside. It's like, that might be a little too much when you have trauma.
Yeah.
There's a lot of techniques in the book, especially here's how to play if you're not used to playing. Here's how you can be creative if you're not an artist, and just really, really small bite-sized things that are going to help create enough regulation in your system that you can even begin to tolerate the trauma work that's needed.
Yeah, because it kind of speaks to neuroplasticity too, right? Like, we don't have to know why. It's funny, it makes me think of piano. So your circus is my piano. Like, I'm always into doing something that I'm not good at, that stretches me a bit, but that is play and fun. And historically, if I sat there and tried too hard to think about, well, why do these keys together make this chord? And why doesn't this one go with this one? And I can't just play. Like, I can't flow. I'm not in it. So that reminds me more of music theory. Like, IFS is like the music theory. Whereas my teacher is amazing. She has this weird version of the piano where everything is in shapes and colors.
I've heard of this approach. I was like,
really
I took the old school type of lessons with the theory, and it was not fun.
I mean, I've learned some theory, just enough, but I'm not reading note by note. It's shape by shape. And then after, like, if I'm in a C chord shape and something is off of the C chord, it's just circled. So I know it's not one of the fingers. It's really cool. But basically it reminds me more of like your aligning take of the parts, where it's like, okay, you don't actually have to dig. You can just do.
Yes.
Like, in that moment.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Now I totally get it.
Yes, that's it.
Is not IFS.
Not IFS. And again, I reference where I'm sort of dismayed at the trend in the wellness world about how people have just invented things all on their own with no inspiration whatsoever. Like, I didn't invent parts work. Dr. Richard Schwartz didn't invent parts work, but he did create the IFS model that's been around for 40 something years. And it's important that I reference, I did not come up with this. Here's his model, broadly speaking. I kind of overview it. And here's where I'm deviating from it. And here's what you get when you deviate in this way. But the model is wonderful. And it's not do this instead of that. It's here's a whole bunch of side quests and on-ramps and other things that you can do if doing that isn't something you want to do.
Right. There is one type of part that I think I had mentioned it really quickly earlier, but we didn't sit with it for too long, is the people pleasing. Mm-hmm. Is there, in your opinion, is the people pleasing part of something? Is it part of the critic? Is it part of a shadow, or is it just its own thing, in your opinion?
Oh, So we can go like super meta on this because technically parts have parts. So is your people pleaser a part of your critic? And the answer is like, I don't know. But what I do know is that it's never just one. It's not like you have one people pleaser. My people pleaser who is a child age will show up in very different ways than a people pleaser who's a teenager, than a people pleaser who's an adult who wants validation or acceptance or attention or whatever. So like assume you have a whole crew of people pleasing parts. And the nice part about parts work is if you're not sure, just kind of investigate.
Yeah.
And it very quickly becomes apparent who's who. And you don't have to get it exact. It's not like you must know exactly that this is the people-pleasing part of your critic, but
Get
this
your graph
is the
out. I'm just kidding.
it doesn't, that's why I like this approach. It doesn't
Right.
have to be so precise for
Right.
it to work.
Right. So the people pleaser presents.
Yes.
Let's say hypothetically you're working with a client who has a really strong people pleaser part.
Mm-hmm.
How would you help someone with that? Because honestly, I'm selfishly asking this because I have so many clients, as I was mentioning earlier, who deeply struggle with people pleasing.
So first it's like, and this is an IFS technique, is separating the person from the part. It's like, I'm such a people pleaser. No, you're not. You have a part of you. And I really hammer the parts language. I'm anxious. You have a part of you who's experiencing anxiety. I'm this. No, you have a part of you who's experiencing this. So the first task clinically is we have to separate the people pleaser part from the you, the self, who's noticing that. Then we've got to, before we can change it, the work is internally. We've got to develop a relationship with this part. Who are they? How old are they? What is it that's going on for them? What are they afraid of? The fears of a 4-year-old people-pleasing part are going to be different than the fears of a 25-year-old people-pleasing part. So we've got to investigate before we can start intervening in any way that makes sense. You know, most people just try to white knuckle it. It's like, I was codependent for decades, and you can't white knuckle that. It doesn't work.
Yeah. So let's say you are identifying this. Would you recommend people just be thinking all this, be journaling this, be talking about this? Like, because I can only imagine someone listening right now is probably either feverishly writing notes,
Yeah.
freaking out, or spacing out because it's so much to think about doing internally.
So I always say, like, don't let the parts work thing overwhelm you. Like, we can just start. The highest level is that there's a capital S self or the I or the observer. Like, you are not your thoughts.
Yeah.
You are the person who notices the thoughts. If we just start there and you do nothing but just practice noticing your thoughts. Oh, wow. I just had a thought that I look really like when you and I got on this call, I was, late or early. My timing was off. I heard a voice say, "Oh my gosh, she's gonna hate you and you're gonna get canceled."
Oh,
so I didn't
definitely don't.
I trust our relationship enough now to know that wasn't likely, but
Right.
it was still a thought. I didn't align with it. I didn't explore it. I didn't journal about it. I just noticed I was having a thought. And so
okay.
I would say before you even start the process of let's do this, practice like a week or a month of just noticing. That's a thought. I am not the thought. I am the I who notices the thought. That's it. Like, if you do that for
Love
a
it.
month, you're going to feel a lot less overwhelmed by the stuff that we do next.
I love that. Yeah, and that is simple. It kind of reminds me a bit of like that acceptance commitment work where you diffuse from the thought or the idea of it. I sometimes tell folks, imagine, and I'm sure this is probably a real act thing, like imagine the thought or the experience is up on a movie screen and you're sitting there in the theater having your popcorn, like doing
same
your
idea.
thing. Mm-hmm.
Same idea.
So there's one part of the parts that we did not really touch on either that I wanted to make sure to ask you about because I thought it was an interesting perspective. Most of us have heard of shadow parts. And like most people, when I thought of shadow parts, admittedly, after all these years of therapy, I had a negative connotation connected to shadow parts. But you took a totally different spin on them. So if you wouldn't mind highlighting that would be really great.
My editor at my publisher said the same thing because I submitted that chapter and she's like, I thought shadow work was all your negative stuff. Like, what is this?
I was like, what does it say about me that I love romantic dating shows? Now that I learned from you about parts.
Oh, so many places to go with that. So the idea of shadows, again, just like really simply put, in nature, like if you look outside, shadows form when objects block the light. So light is blocked, a shadow is cast. It's not positive or negative. It's just what it is. And so psychological shadows is anything about us. It can be positive, negative, it doesn't matter, that we're not connected to or aware of. Like, what are we blocking? It's not always our negative qualities. In fact, a lot of people are very connected to their flaws, but they are profoundly disconnected from their power, their innovation, their creativity, their beauty, their worth. Like, oh my gosh. And like, there are psychoanalysts who called those golden shadows. And so, but like a shadow's a shadow. So like anything about yourself that you're not connected with is a shadow. Positive or negative, it can be either. And shadow work is the process of reconnecting with any disconnected parts or aspects of yourself.
Yeah, and I was referencing the part where you were saying to find some of those, as they call them, golden shadows. The shadows, just connecting with things that you enjoy or things that you lean towards or are attracted to. And I just was thinking, that's really interesting. So then I thought about the fact that I love The Bachelor. And then I asked myself, what does that say about me? Maybe I have a romantic part. Is my romantic shadow not getting enough light? Like it was an interesting internal kind of conversation when you start learning about it.
I love that. And I, like, especially at Christmas, I'm just a junkie for Hallmark movies. And I have to be careful because my fantasy parts will take that and then be very dissatisfied with everything about my actual life.
Right.
And so I don't really take the time to excavate where I kind of generally get why I have a teenage part that is boy crazy and fantasizes about the rescue. Like, I have mother wounds and attachment trauma. I get it.
Right.
I let her watch them all she wants from Thanksgiving to Christmas, and then we call it for the rest of the year. And that's the negotiation.
It's funny because I think my version would be I let myself watch it, but I don't demand my husband take me on a helicopter ride.
That's the negotiation. That's the end of a line. And for a lot of people, they don't know to do that. They just immediately assume what I see is what it should be, and therefore I am resentful. And it's like, let's take the time to, if you're conscious of I enjoy fantasy romance, great, as long as you're conscious that it's fantasy, and real people don't really do that.
Right, exactly. Now, can I ask you, when you compare shadow parts in the way that you were discussing it with exiles in the IFS model, are they the same? Are they different?
So technically, if we're going on getting technical, all parts that we're not connected to are shadow parts. So if you have a firefighter that you hate, if you have, a manager, people pleaser part that I don't understand why I keep saying yes and I'm burnt out and I can't set boundaries and it's so hard. That's a shadow part. So all parts until they're connected to the I or the self are going to be shadowed until we call them into consciousness and bring them home.
Got you. Okay. So now I'm glad to ask because these were all these different things ticking in my head as I was reading your fabulous book. So
thanks.
Well, for anyone listening today, I would imagine they're probably walking away with a lot of new information, ideas, but probably even more things to learn more about because we just kind of opened all these fun baskets and information and containers. And if they want to learn more about it, they should go get your fantastic book, which I wish I could hold up. I have it in my computer and in my Audible. But yes, please point to it. You could even hold it up, because there we go. Awesome. I love your design too. Very pretty.
I didn't come up with it. Something I never knew about traditional publishing is you don't get a say. They show it to you and say, I hope you like it. And I love it. And so big shout out to the team at Charter Books.
Yeah, no, they did great. It's awesome. And it works nicely with your other one as well. So
same designer did both covers.
That's the best.
Yeah.
So when you think about all the things we talked about today and the people who are listening and the reason that they wanted to, learn about all of this, is there anything that we didn't talk about? Any question? I mean, I just hit you up with so many questions. So thank you for being along for the ride that you want to leave them with, and then where they can, find you, find your books, and find out more about your circus act.
So I don't think we said it, but I want to leave people with this. Not all behaviors are good, but all parts are. And so there is not one part of your mind that's bad or against you or trying to attack you. All of your parts are valuable, and when they're connected to the self, life works better. Your mind's on your side. It always has been. They're your team, they're your people. And so it's not easy, but your mind is, in fact, on your side. And I won't be doing circus again for a minute. I've been training for a year for that show, but the photos are on my Instagram at Britt Frank, and you can find the book wherever you buy books or my website, brittfrank.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Britt, for coming back to the Sensitivity Doctor. Yes. And honestly, for writing this book. I'm so excited. I've shared it with family and friends already and clients, and I'm just asking everyone to go out and get it. So please, everyone, go get your copy and feel free to message with any of your parts that you want to know more questions about. So be well, everyone.